This is a bad road for cats. And while I read this story, we are going to be thinking about our main character, Magda, and how she changes from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. So be looking at those character traits and be thinking about the way that you would describe Magda at the beginning and how you would describe her at the end. A bad road for cats. Louie, Louis, where are you? The woman called it out again and again as she walked along Route 6, a bad road for cats. She prayed he hadn't wandered this far, but it had nearly been 2 weeks and still Louis hadn't come home. She stopped at a Shell station, striding up to the young man at the register. Her eyes snapped black and fiery as she spit the question at him. Have you seen a cat? The word cat came out hard as a rock. The young man straightened up. No, ma'am, no cats around here. Somebody dropped a mutt off a couple nights ago, but a Mack truck got it yesterday about noon. Dog didn't have a chance. The woman's eyes pinched his. I lost my cat, orange and white. If you see him, you be more careful of him than that dog. This is a bad road for cats. And she marched towards the door. I'll be back, she said, like a threat. And the young man straightened up again as she went out. Louis, where are you? She was a very tall woman and skinny. Her black hair was long and shiny like an Indian's. She might have been a Cherokee making her way alongside a river, alert and watchful, tracking. But Route 6 was no river. It was a trucker's road, lined with gas stations, motels, dairy bars, diners, a nasty road smelling of diesel and rubber. The woman's name was Magda, and so turn the page and you should see a 58 at the bottom. She was of French blood, not Indian. Magda was not old, but she carried herself as a very old and strong person might, with no fear of death and with a clear sense of her right to the earth and a disdain for the ugliness of belching machines and concrete. Magda lived in a small house about 2 miles off Route 6. There she worked at a loom, weaving wool gathered from the sheep she owned. Magda's husband was dead, and she had no children, only a cat named Louis. Honk, honk, honk. Magda's heart pounded as a tank truck roared by. Honk! The horn hurt her ears, making her feel sick inside, stealing some of her strength. 4 years before, Magda had found Louis at one of the gas stations on Route 6. She had been on her way home from her weekly trip to the grocery and had pulled in for a fill-up. As she'd stood inside the station in front of the cigarette machine, dropping in quarters, she'd felt warm fur against her leg and had given a start. Looking down, she'd seen an orange and white kitten. It had purred and meowed and pushed its nose into Magda's shoes. Smiling, Magda had picked the kitten up. Then she had seen the horror. Half of the kitten's tail was gone. What remained was bloody and scabbed, and the stump stuck straight out. Magda had carried the animal to one of the station attendants. Whose kitten is this? Her eyes drilled in the question. The attendant had shrugged his shoulders. Nobody's, just a drop-off. Magda had moved closer to him. What happened to its tail? She asked, the words slow and clear. Got caught in the door. Stupid cat was under everybody's feet. No wonder half its tail got whacked. Magda could not believe such a thing. And you offer it no help? She had asked. Not my cat, he answered. Magda's face had blazed as she turned and stalked out the door with the kitten. A veterinarian mended what was left of the kitten's tail, and Magda named it Louis for her grandfather. Louis, where are you? Now you should see a 60 at the bottom of the next page. Dun, dun! Another horn at her back. Magda wondered about her decision to walk Route 6 rather than drive it. She had thought that on foot she might find Louis more easily. In a ditch, under some bushes, up a tree. They were even, she and Louis, if she were on foot too. The trucks were making her misery worse. Magda saw a dairy bar up ahead. She thought she would stop and rest. She would have some coffee and a slice of quiet away from the road. She walked across the wide gravel lot to the tiny walk-up window. Pictures of strawberry sundaes, spongy cakes, spongy shakes, cones with curly peaks were plastered all over the building, drawing business from the road with big red words like chili. Magda barely glanced at the young girl working inside. All teenage girls looked alike to her. Coffee, she ordered. Black? Yes. Magda moved to one side and leaned against the building. The trucks were rolling out on the highway, but far enough away to give her time to regain her strength. No horns, no smoke, no dirt, a little peace. She drank her coffee and thought about Louis when he was a kitten. Once he had leaped from her attic window, and she had found him, stunned and shivering, on the hard gravel below. The veterinarian said Louis had broken a leg and was lucky to be alive. The kitten had stomped around in a cast for a few weeks. Magda drew funny faces on it to cheer him up. Louis loved white cheese, tall grass, and the skeins of wool Magda left lying around her loom. That's what she thought she would miss most. She thought if Louis never came back, an orange and white cat making the yarn fly under her loom. Magda finished her coffee, then turned to throw the empty cup in the trash can. As she did, a little sign in the bottom corner of the window caught her eye. The words were surrounded by dirty smudges. For sale. Cat. Magda caught her breath. She moved up to the window and this time looked squarely into the face of the girl. Now you should see 62 at the bottom of the page.
These are upside down.
It's just the way they're stapled. That's why I'm telling you the page number so you know how to find it. Are you selling a cat? She said quietly, but hard on Cat. Not me, this boy, the girl answered, brushing her stringy hair back from her face. Where is he? Magda asked. That yellow house right up the road there. Magda headed across the lot. She had to knock only once. The door opened, and standing there was a boy about 15. I saw your sign, Magda said. I am interested in your cat. The boy did not answer. He looked at Magda's face with his wide blue eyes, and he grinned, showing a mouth of rotten and missing teeth. Magda felt a chill move over her. The cat, she repeated. You have one to sell. Is it orange and white? And the boy stopped grinning. Without a word, he slammed the door in Magda's face. She was stunned. A strong woman like her, to be so stunned by a boy, it shamed her. But again, she knocked on the door, and very hard this time. No answer. What kind of boy is this? Magda asked herself. A strange one. And she feared he had Louis. She had just raised her hand to knock a third time when the door opened. And there the boy stood, with Louis in his arms. Again, Magda was stunned. Her cat was covered with oil and dirt. He was thin and his head hung weakly. When he saw Magda, he seemed to use his last bit of strength to let out a pleading cry. And the boy was no longer grinning. He held Louis close against him, forcefully stroking the cat's ears, and again and again. The boy's eyes were full of tears, his mouth twisted into a sad protest. Magda wanted to leap for Louis, steal him, and run for home. But she knew better. This was an unusual boy. She must be careful. Magda put her hand into her pocket and pulled out a $1 bill. Enough? She asked, holding it up. The boy clutched the cat harder, his mouth puckering fiercely. Magda pulled out 2 more $1 bills. She held the money up, the question in her eyes. The boy relaxed his hold on Louis. He tilted his head to one side as if considering Magda's offer. Then in desperation, Magda pulled out a $20 bill. Enough! She almost screamed. The boy's head jerked upright. Then he grabbed all the bills with one hand and shoved Louis at Magda with the other. Magda cradled Louis in her arms, rubbing her cheek across his head. Before walking away, she looked once more at the boy. He stood stiffly with the money clenched in his hands, tears running from his eyes and dripping off his face like rainwater. Magda took Louis home. She washed him and healed him, and for many days she was in a rage at that strange boy who had sold her own cat, nearly dead. But when Louis was healthy, though, and his old fat self playing games among the yard beneath her loom, her rage grew smaller and smaller. until finally she could forgive the strange boy. She came to feel sympathy for him, remembering his tears, and she wove some orange and white wool into a pattern, stuffed it with cotton, sewed 2 green button eyes and a small pink mouth onto it, then attached a small stub of a tail. She put the gift in a paper bag, and on her way to the grocery store one day, she dropped the bag in front of the boy's yellow house.